Welcome, scribes of the extraordinary. Today, we are going beyond entertainment and diving deep into the craft of storytelling. On today's journey, we're going to be talking about good versus evil. First, we're going to be addressing the differences between a protagonist and a hero, an antagonist and a villain, and then we're going to talk about lancers and dragons. So, first, what is the difference between a protagonist and a hero? Oftentimes, the protagonist is a hero, right? Don't all protagonists need to be heroes? Not necessarily. So, the protagonist is the point of view character of the story. The protagonist is the person that we follow. It is as simple as that. The protagonist is who the story is centered around. They are the ones that make the important decisions throughout the story. It's their actions that drive most of the plot. The protagonist is the one that makes the final climactic decision that changes the entire course of the story. As the protagonist, now often, especially in good versus evil stories, your protagonist is a hero. Now, a hero is an archetype, someone who is just, who has noble intentions, who protects people, who fights the bad guys, who slays the monsters. But not every protagonist has to be a hero. Although often, heroes tend to be protagonists. We like to see the good guys win. So, in the similar vein, is every antagonist a villain? Well, firstly, what is an antagonist? An antagonist is the opposing force towards the protagonist. Notice that I use the word force. Antagonistic force. Your antagonist doesn't necessarily need to be a person, but it very often is. For example, your antagonist can be a villain. They could be the bad guy that the protagonist is trying to stop. Your antagonist can absolutely be evil. However, your antagonist can be a friend or a family member of the protagonist. Just think about it. If you have a young kid who wants to go fight the bad guys and his parents don't want him to go fight the bad guys, not because their son's trying to do the wrong thing. Their son wants to do the right thing, but they want to keep him safe. In that circumstance, his parents, the hero's parents, can be an antagonistic force. That doesn't mean they have a bad relationship. That doesn't mean they don't love each other. But in that circumstance, they are an obstacle for the hero. They're trying to stop the hero. You can have an antagonist be a rival. It could be someone that they're friends with or not, that are going after the same goal as them. And simply because someone's going after the same goal as the protagonist, that could very easily make them a rival. Not everyone going after the same goal can help each other. Sometimes only one person can get the goal. And that tends to fall into being a rival. An antagonist could be just someone doing their job. If your protagonist needs something out of the royal treasury and there's a guard standing in the way, well, the guard's now an antagonist because he's doing his job, and no, he won't let some child steal something out of the royal treasury. That's why he's there to stop things. Well, you can see how your antagonist can be a lot more interesting than just being the villain of your story. And again, I said earlier, the antagonistic force. Your antagonist doesn't need to be a person. Your antagonist could be the entire society. Your antagonist could be war. It could be nature. You can have the protagonist is trying to run out the door and his parents are stopping him, worried that he's going to get himself hurt. And then he could be trying to cross over this huge river that he has no idea how to get over. And then he is fighting a pack of wild wolves because they are after him, or monsters, or whatever. All three of those circumstances are three completely different types of antagonistic forces. So we talked about an antagonist, briefly discuss what a villain is. A villain is someone who is evil. Their actions, their motives are immoral and cruel. They're evil, they're bad, they do evil, they do wrong. Very simple to pinpoint. Often fall into the antagonistic role, but they don't have to. And now we get to a really interesting question of, can a villain be a protagonist? Yes. Yes, they can. Vice versa. If you have a villain who is a protagonist, you can have a hero be an antagonist. A good example of a villain being the protagonist is in the Lunar Chronicles series. There's a novella written from the villain's POV and showcasing her backstory. She is very much the protagonist of that story. It is all about her. It follows her. She is still a villain. She's still completely evil. Her motives and everything is just so wrong. She's not a hero at all. So yes, you can have a villain be the protagonist of your story. So next, we get to talk about Lancers. Now, what is a Lancer? Well, when you're speaking of a more militaristic viewpoint of a Lancer, they are a type of fighter that deals with a lance. It's someone who can be a little bit more of a distance fighter, whether they're actively trying to fight or simply deflect. They have a lot of space to keep the enemies at bay because they are using a lance. They tend to not be nearly as heavily armored as a knight does, who tends to have full armor, are at the front lines, sword, shield, that kind of thing traditionally. So where this comes in with literary standpoint of a Lancer is someone who helps the hero. More importantly, they're the hero's assistant. They tend to be second in command. They tend to be very close to the hero. Sometimes they're a rival. Often they're very good friends. If your hero is the one full armor, sword and shield on the front lines, the Lancer is going to be trying to keep the bad guys off of him, whether he's a sharpshooter or he's using a lance physically. They're going to be the support system for your hero. They're often the leader's best friend, where you have, the hero is very strong. The Lancer could be a lot more agile and mobile. If you have a leader who's more childish, the Lancer tends to be more mature. If you have a leader who's very trusting, you tend to have a Lancer who's a little bit more wary of people. They tend to be foils of one another, and foils is a relationship that is contrary and complementative of each other at the same time. But we'll delve more into foils later on. But Lancers are the confidant of the hero. It's a very close, very special relationship. Often, if the hero goes down, it's the Lancer that steps up and leads. They balance out the hero. So, this next section is one of my favorite aspects of literature, and that is, what is a dragon? No, I'm not talking about the serpent-like creatures that fly with large giant wings and breathe fire. I'm talking about the archetype dragon. And I really want to know how many of you actually know what this archetype is before I get into it. Please let me know in the comments if you've heard of the dragon archetype before. It's one of my favorite things to bring up to people because most people have never heard about it before, even though it's everywhere in storytelling. So if you've heard about it, please let me know. I really want to see who else knows about this archetype. But the dragon is the villain's lancer. The dragon is the villain's number 2. A dragon is the second in command. And the reason why dragons are so much fun in literature and why they're also really important if you do have this big bad guy is when you think about it, having a big bad guy, having a villain, they tend to be in control of a large population, whether it's a nation, a secret society, or their team. They tend to be in a leadership role. And people in a leadership role can't be mobile for the sake of they are the ones everyone needs to come to for guidance and to be led. Your dragon can be mobile. Your dragon is often the face that the heroes encounter. Your dragon is often the ones that deals directly with your protagonist and their hero team. And this is what can make dragons so much more interesting than villains is you can your dragon can have a little bit more of a humanity about them because they're so much more intimately involved with your heroes. Think about it. If your characters are constantly being pursued by somebody, when they run into them, isn't that a problem? Your dragon will start to learn the tactics of your hero and their team. Vice versa. Let's go back to Star Wars as a good example. In Star Wars, you think of Darth Vader is the villain. Not true. He is a villain, but he's not the villain. Vader's not calling the shots. Emperor Palpatine is calling the shots. Darth Sidious is calling the shots. Vader's the dragon. Vader is the one who's directly going after Luke. Vader was the one that kidnapped Leia. Vader was the one that lured all of Luke's friends into a trap, luring Luke to him. Vader's the one that Luke confronts time and again throughout the series. When Vader shows up, we're scared. Why? We're scared because he is the one who's a threat. Yes, Darth Sidious is out there somewhere controlling everything. He's the Emperor we must take down. But it's Vader that instills fear because he's so prevalent, because he's so near, because he's always after the heroes. Your dragons tend to be the threat that not only your heroes care more about, but your audience will care more about as well. Especially because they create that intimacy. I mean, think about it. From kind of the example we were using a bit earlier with the boy who's running off to stop the evil in the world. He's going off to stop the evil in the world. There is evil in the world. He needs to stop it. But if his little sister was kidnapped, all bets are off. He's going after her and whoever took her especially. Now it's more personal. Your dragon takes your villain's plot, their ploy, their conquering the world, whatever it is, and makes it personal to your characters, personal to your protagonist. And that's why dragons are so important when you are writing these big good versus evil stories, is because they can make your villain seem a lot more of a threat. because it hits closer to home. So what are some prevalent types of dragons? As I already talked about, we have Vader and Emperor Palpatine. We have Azula and Fire Lord Ozai. We have Saruman and Sauron. We have Starscream and Megatron. More modern, we have Harley Quinn to Joker. It's whoever is the one that is, side by side with the villains, the one that they can rely on to get the job done. Dragons are a lot of fun. And this time I am also talking about the big scaly beasts with wings that breathe fire. Both types of dragons, I love them. So, question of the week. Who is your favorite dragon or your favorite lancer? Vader is a great choice, but since I've talked about Vader a good bit already, I'm going to choose someone different. I really enjoy Starscream as a dragon, and that's because of his relationship with Megatron. We know Starscream wants to be at the top. We know he wants to be in control. He knows he wants to be in control. Megatron also knows he wants to be in control. And the whole reason why Starscream is kept around in the first place is because Megatron knows he's constantly trying to usurp his throne. He keeps Starscream around just to keep himself on his toes. And I think that makes for some really fun dynamics between the two. But what about you? What is your favorite dragon or your favorite lancer? And again, had you heard of the archetype dragon before? Well, my scribes of the extraordinary, that is all for today. I look forward to our next encounter together as we continue going beyond entertainment, one step at a time.